Chapter 6 Beyond the Double Doors. We stumbled to a half-empty table with our trays and pulled our chairs close. So, are we ready to call the cops yet? Asked John. Or the loony bin? Asked Sydney. Maybe we can get a deal 3 for 1. I made a face at her. Who are you talking about, us or the lunch ladies? Sydney had the book now and was flipping its pages with one hand while she forked up macaroni with the other. To borrow a line from you, Owen, I don't know. She was quiet for a minute, thinking. I mean, we did see a fire-breathing wolf. We did, John said. And Dana did vanish, she added. She did, I said. And if those ladies... Sydney paused to look toward the kitchen. If those ladies really are the Valkyries from Norse mythology, what they told us might be true. If. Might, I echoed, stabbing my macaroni a little harder than I planned. Are you saying Dana was actually taken to the underworld, and that the underworld is below our school? The other kids at the table looked over at me. Oops. Ha ha, still kidding, said John. Listen, said Sydney, whispering now. Where do they have double red doors and ancient things? Guys, I think we need to learn more about Orpheus's lyre. Let's finish eating and go to the library. I nodded. The farther we get away from the kitchen, the better I'll feel. We cleared our trays and ran upstairs. Plunking down at the first open computer, we logged in and started searching. Orpheus, lair, red doors, ancient things, said Sydney, clacking away on the keys. I paced back and forth, but it was less than a minute before she and John were cupping their hands over their mouths. Whoa, said Sydney. Sydney said. The art museum in town was an exhibit that's closing today. It's called Ancient Treasures, and the picture of the museum here shows that it has, ta-da, double red doors. As Sydney scrolled down and I paced, John read over her shoulder. It's got swords, shields, scrolls, jeweled stuff, and... Stop! Stop! Owen, said Sydney, staring from the screen to me. You'll never believe... I stopped pacing. The lair of Orpheus? Yes, Sydney said. The lair is part of the exhibit leaving the museum today. Its next stop is another museum in... I held my breath as she scrolled to the bottom of the page. She raised her face to me, her eyes wide. Iceland, she said. I felt as cold as if I were in Iceland. The lunch ladies want us to steal the lair of Orpheus? Seriously? Asked John. Orpheus's lair is one of the most powerful objects of the ancient world, Sydney said. Maybe it'll help us get Dana back. That was it, wasn't it? We had to help Dana. The museum is 5 blocks from here, I said. We can walk, but we'll need to get out of school for the afternoon. John groaned. Never gonna happen. But Sydney jumped up from the computer and grinned. My dad's the shop teacher, don't forget. He can give us a pass. We looked at one another. I didn't like lying, but this was different. If there was something mythological and magical and weird going on, no one was going to believe us. Dana would still be gone, maybe gone for good. We had to do something. Next stop, shop class, I said, marching out of the library. It turned out that Mr. Lamberti was a nice guy who didn't ask a lot of questions. 10 minutes later, we were staring up at a small white granite building with a set of large red doors. Marble columns, at least 20 feet tall, stood across the front of the museum like warriors at attention. It was an imitation of a Greek temple, which seemed completely right and scary. We raced up the steps and through the doors, paid admission, and walked as fast as we could to the exhibit. It was curtained off, but we peeked in. Several guards and a couple of curators in suits were moving around from display to display with clipboards, checking things off, pointing. They're getting ready to ship it out, Sydney whispered. We slipped behind one heavy curtain and peeked out to scan the long room. After talking to the Valkyries, some things were beginning to make sense in my mind. Get the lair, go to the underworld. Well, one of the underworlds. Save Dana. Yeah, right. The whole thing was nuts, completely. But despite all that, things were starting to click in my head. No, not click. Hum. There are a dozen display cases with instruments in them, Sydney whispered. How do we know which one has the second one from the end? I said, pointing. My friends stared at me. Maybe it was all those years at my grandma's house, learning how to play guitar, feeling music in my fingers. Maybe it wasn't me at all, but the lair. Miss Marge had told us it was magical and powerful. Whatever the reason, I heard the lair. I deci- and apparently no one else could. Thrum. Owen, are you receiving signals from the beyond? Whispered Sydney. No, from that case at the end of the room, I said. The lair's in there. We need to get closer. And get ourselves arrested, John said. I knew it was crazy, but so is what I had seen happen to Dana that morning. Thrum. Follow me, I whispered. As if I suddenly knew what I was doing, I ducked behind the curtain and ran out to the far end of the hall, peering in the door closet to the case. John and Sydney followed and crouched next to me. Two workers came over to the case. One inserted a key and the other tilted the glass back. As he did, the sound grew louder in my ears. Thrum, thrum. It was like someone urging me, Owen, come on. Slipping out a pair of white gloves, the curator lifted the lair. I drew in a breath. That was it. It was a wooden horseshoe, a foot square and painted gold, though most of its paint had flecked off. A crossbar connected the two arms of the U with 7 strings stretched between it and the bottom of the U. John gave me a nudge. Owen, stop drooling over that thing and look over there. A lone figure in a dark coat was lurking behind the curtain we had just abandoned. He wore thick black headphones over his ears. He crept closer and stopped. I began to sweat. Maybe it wasn't just gods and monsters. Maybe there were people involved in this mystery too. Who's he? Whispered Sydney. Someone else who doesn't want to be seen, said John. Someone who wants to steal the lair too? We should probably get out of here. But the man with the headphones was blocking our escape route. Everywhere else, there were more guards than we could deal with. We were trapped. The moment the curator set the lair in a wooden box, the thing hummed in my ears again, and Soul Snatcher's words came back. The music of Orpheus's lair could charm people and beasts to do his bidding. Impossible, right? But I heard it. Did that mean it could actually work? And could it work for me? Quickly forming a plan, I jumped out of hiding and grabbed the lair from the box. I need this, I shouted. Owen! Cried Sydney, reaching for me. All the lights went up, and the man with the headphones ducked behind the curtain. I heard him running off down the hall. Guards swarmed over us in seconds. Who are you? They yelled. Up against the wall. Put put that down, said a curator. Gently, please. I think you'd better plug your ears, I whispered to John and Sydney as I placed my fingers on 3 of the 7 strings. Don't ask why. Now! As they jammed their fingers in their ears, I turned to the curator. You mean this? I plucked the strings. Brum, thrum, hum. The 3 strings vibrated, and the world around me quieted. Everything slowed down. Things moved so little that I thought time had stopped. The moment passed, and just after it did, I watched the guards drop their arms to their sides. That's my favorite tune, one said, smiling. Mine too, said another, closing his eyes. I brushed the strings again, and the chief guard said, You kids better get back to school. The side entrance is the quickest way out. What about the lair? I asked. You play it so nicely, said the curator. Try it for a few days. If you like it, keep it. So, the lair was magical. It could make people do things on command, ridiculous things, and for some reason, I knew how to use it. Okay then, I said, bye. Fingers still in their ears, John and Sydney stumbled after me down the hall to the museum doors, and soon We were out on the front steps. No one chased us, no alarm blared, nothing. How did you do that? John blurted, finally unplugging his ears. I didn't, I said. The lyre did. It has amazing powers. The thief knows it too. I bet he was wearing those big headphones to block the lyre's sound. I looked down at the magical instrument in my hands. Look, if Dana was taken to the underworld, no matter how or why, school is where it happened. The Valkyries said that the entrance is under the school, so that's where we need to be. With this, we'd better hurry, said Sydney, checking her cell. Dismissal's in 8 minutes. Our parents. We ran as fast as we could and arrived at school just as the buses were pulling out. I saw my mom waiting in her car and headed over to her. Owen, she said, getting out and looking annoyed, I just saw Mr. Lamberti and he told me you were all gone from school. What's going on? Why isn't Dana with you? I drew in a slow breath to calm myself and glanced at John and said, Mom, I can explain everything. Listen. John and Sydney slapped their hands over their ears just in time as the lyre's strings moved under my fingers. We're all staying after school. Dana is inside. We're doing some extra credit. I mean, if that's okay with you. I knew it was wrong, but when Mom's expression went from annoyed to interested to happy, it seemed like the right thing to do. Pretty little harp, Mom said, smiling. Reminds me of your grandmother. Me too, I said. Mom, we're going back into school now. Dana and I will come home for dinner, I promise. Mom nodded and grinned from ear to ear. See you then. I hope I wouldn't have to break my promise.